This is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1 FM. And this interview segment brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Cyberbullying is becoming more prominent as each day goes on and as technology advances. And of course, with students now, many of them attending classes virtually, that number is on the rise. Joining us right now, family safety experts with Heads Up, Houston's public safety nonprofit organization and a member of Crime Stoppers of Houston, Rania Mankarious, who is an expert on the topic of cyberbullying. Rania, thank you very much for joining us this morning here on Indiana in the Morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what cyberbullying is so that we can get a clear definition of it, because many people might not be aware of this sort of thing happening. So what is cyberbullying in its purest sense?
Well, it's not just name-calling. It's the persistent, habitual use of an online platform to really hurt another person, to target, to verbally assault, to some compare it to stalking, and it's done with the intent to harm another, to create fear, frustration, intimidation, anxiety, and it's something that young kids are doing more and more through this horrible pandemic.
That's right, because as we mentioned, a lot of the kids now are actually taking virtual classes and doing that, and we see instances of the cyberbullying going up, but not just in these virtual classrooms, but elsewhere, right?
You're seeing it across all platforms. We first were looking at Zoom, and we noticed that while kids were doing their digital learning, the Zoom chat was just roaring with bullying even of the teacher's background, of other students' backgrounds, of what kids were wearing, kids who were laying down in their bed during classes. So that was one of the first areas we really, really saw it. But we're, again, seeing this type of bullying across all social media platforms, and kids are using every possible method and manner to criticize one another, to hurt one another, and to really create a very hostile place on social media.
Cyberbullying is nothing new, I think, because we have seen it in the social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and others in years past. I think it's just become more prevalent, I guess, because of the fact that we're spending now a lot of time online in front of a computer screen.
Yes, and we did an interview with a group of high school kids just the other day, and what they said was what we expected. They said, we're bored, and we're online more than ever. And then they also said, they're desensitized to it. This is just what they do, and that's what's scary. That's where we have to sit here and say, wait a minute, because in your boredom and as you're online engaging with one another, we have to remember the consequences of these words and these actions are very devastating for others. We're seeing suicidal rates go up. We're seeing self-harm rates go up. We're seeing emotional distress rates go up. And these are not things to just shy away from. These are very important issues that we have to be looking at as parents, as teachers, as mentors, as aunts and uncles, and as community leaders.
So, and I've also seen studies that it's not just the victims of cyberbullying who are impacted by this, but the bullies themselves also, I think they can also possibly develop some problems psychologically down the road.
Well, I think, unfortunately, whatever seed you sow, you reap yourself. And the online bullying is really, really toxic. It's a very negative space to be in. It's also very much a symptom of other issues going on. So the bully, well, they might want to portray this image of being in power, which is, of course, at the heart of bullying, and being in control. What it's often a sign of is great distress, discomfort, anxiety in the person who is doing the bullying, which is why these things can't be overlooked. We've seen people say, well, kids will be kids. This is just a sign of the times. And unfortunately, that's not the answer. And we have to really look at what's going on underneath and really start to address these issues.
One of the things that we've often been told is to just kind of brush it off, make it feel like it doesn't really affect you. But for me, at least in some experiences that I've read about or have experienced myself, the bullies just seem to continue to progress and they get worse and worse and worse with their bullying.
Yes, they do, because it's an open road, and like anything online, you constantly want more. It's created for you to want to engage, to determine response, and to focus on the next hit, being even bigger than the first. So it is relentless. It is relentless, and it's persistent, and it's evasive, and it gives you every opportunity to be aggressive because your abuser, your victim rather, is not in front of you. So there's nothing that you have to take in from the other side that might mitigate your actions. And that creates the recipe for a disaster, especially when you're dealing with kids who are not mature enough to understand what they're doing.
Now, do most parents and teachers know what signs to look for?
You know, you would hope that they do, but because some don't even recognize that cyberbullying is really happening at the level it's happening, or they brush it off to what we were saying, you know, kids will be kids, they often overlook some of the serious signs, which of course is isolation, depression, a change in friends, a change in eating habits, a change in grades, a change in online activity, hiding their phone, hiding their gadgets, aggressiveness, emotional swings. There's a lot to look out for, and parents can't overlook it. You also can't just say, well, these are the teenage years and brush it off.
We're talking with Rania Mankarious, an expert on family safety, about cyberbullying here on Indiana in the Morning. Rania, what can parents do to help fight against cyberbullies?
The reality is to realize that this is happening and to start at home by talking to your child about what type of digital citizen they're going to be. We say have these conversations the very first day you give them a gadget, even a tablet to learn their ABCs. You talk about online engagement, and what their brand will be, what type of person they're going to be. You also, as they age, talk about the civil responsibilities, criminal responsibilities, the school moral code of conduct, your family moral code of conduct. Talk about all of it. And then should your child be a victim of bullying, you've got to address it. You've got to screenshot everything. Do not take the phone away from your own child. Don't punish the victim, but be aggressive in combating it. Report on the platforms that the bullying is taking place on. Report it to the school. If you are sure who the bully is, go talk to them directly or their parent. And if you must, you get law enforcement involved.
And what can teachers do as well? Can they set up like a code of conduct, or can they legally shut off the chat for students in case things are popping up in chat, like you were saying?
Absolutely, and most schools, if not all schools, do have a moral code of conduct that includes online activity, and it's absolutely up to the schools to monitor, Zoom platforms or any web-based platform that they are using, and it's absolutely in their right to disable all types of chat and to mitigate this type of bullying. We're very proud that in Texas now, cyberbullying laws apply to activity that takes place even off school campus. That wasn't the case a few years ago. A few years ago, schools will say, well, it didn't happen on the playground or the school bus or in the classroom. It's not our problem. Well, that's not the case anymore. And I think more across the country, you will be seeing laws extended in that direction, which means that schools have a role to play in combating cyberbullying.
Rania Mankarious, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Indiana in the Morning to talk about this very serious topic that has been on the rise. All the best to you, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Rania Mankarious, a family safety expert with Heads Up, Houston's public safety nonprofit organization, and Crime Stoppers of Houston, joining us this morning on Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. And our interviews are presented by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people.